Allison Braun, thanks for joining us again on Money and Politics. And folks, I hope you're going to be paying attention here. Allison and I had done an interview before on her buying the first NFT that Humbl put out. And then we met in Nashville last week. And Allison and I, both had an opportunity to meet with Brian and people in the hierarchy of Humbl. And so I asked her if she would join us to discuss what she got out of Nashville and what her attitudes were before Nashville, what her attitudes are now, having had a chance to talk to Brian and talk to some of the other investors that were attending that conference. And hopefully that'll be helpful for you out in Humbl Nation watching that. But Allie, let's do this before we do that. I want to get a couple of photos in there. And so let me bring up a couple. One of the ones that I like, and I've shown this before, and that's with you and I and Rebecca, and we are here. This is one of the party with some others, and folks, I'm just going to say we're if you want to see the photos, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on them, but it might give you, again, if you hadn't seen before, we'll have some extra photos. And if you don't want to see the photos, you can fast forward and we'll get to our conversation. But this was a great one, but you sent me just now for the purpose of the interview some of the others. I say that you've met Brian, and here you are with Jordan, and there's Brian Foote. And also, tell us about this one, Allie. What's Brian here holding up a shirt? What's the story on this?
Military, police, and we gave Brian a shirt, and he was nice enough to hold it up and take a photo with it. And I'm hoping he's wearing it, maybe even around his house at home. Very personable guy. It was super awesome meeting him.
You got a number of pictures with Brian. I got one, and I didn't. I would like to have gotten more. I kind of regret that I didn't. But here's another one where you can see, folks. We had the Humbl background there. And that's Jordan in the foreground, Rebecca, or Allie rather, on the left, Rebecca on the right, and there's, again, Brian Foote, the CEO. So right here, you've got three. And then the last one, this is another good one, and it shows the stylish Allie with her nice cowboy boots on, very appropriate. I think Brian had some cowboy boots on as well. I'm not sure. I know he did on Friday. But very appropriate for Nashville and the Nashville scene. So enough to say, I suppose, that we all had a pretty good time, but it was more than just good. We all had the opportunity to, get in there and talk with some other investors and talk with Brian, and that's all to the good. So you obviously had invested in Humbl before, as I did, as everyone did that was there. Give us an overview. How did your experience of going to Nashville and talking with the hierarchy of the company, and isn't that great how accessible they were? How, if in any way, did that alter your view of Humbl and your feelings about your investment in the company?
Well, I mean, I had high convictions before, but having a chance to actually have personal conversations with them, one of the things that Brian said is, most CEOs are afraid of their shareholders. He certainly wasn't. He spent time talking to everyone. The entire team spent time talking to everyone. I had a nice conversation with Michelle, a little bit about her background, her career before. Kerry said I'm one of her favorite investors. I spent some time with Jenny. I felt that the time that they actually took with each one of us was completely amazing. And if I wasn't convicted 100% before, I am 1,000% convicted now. I will be holding Humbl for many, many years.
Yeah, so on one hand, I think, it's more than, I don't want people watching to think, well, they're just bragging that they went there and that they had a good time and that they got to meet Brian. There is that on one level. It was fun, and yes, it was fun to meet Brian. But I think it also, as to emphasize what you just said, the fact that they were accessible says something it says a lot, I think, about who they are, and they're the leadership. And it starts
It
with
speaks
Brian,
volumes.
and it says a lot about the company and how accessible they are and how transparent they are, and that they're not hiding from the investors, and that they were out there just putting themselves forward. And I think that's a great thing. And as you said, Brian said on stage, he didn't talk long, but he said, look at the crowd here and how many of the CEOs hide from their investors, and here they are mixing it up on the dance floor and partying and talking with us. And I never invested in any company that said, hey, by the way, at the end of the year or near the end of the year, we're going to have a party we can all go to if you want.
Neither have I.
What a great deal.
This was a first for me too.
Did you hear anything over the course of the weekend, and did you talk to Brian or others, in depth somewhat about some issues? And some you may not want to discuss what you talked about, and some maybe you do. So why don't you share with us what, if anything, you want about your discussions with Brian or others in leadership? And if I think that you, going from what you just said, that you're even more encouraged about the future of Humbl. So why don't you just elaborate on that a little bit more as to why you are a little bit more encouraged on the future?
I mean, I tried not to ask them questions that I knew that they would not be able to answer. They can't violate, they have to be careful. The SEC regulations, there's certain things they can and can't say. Of course, I did, express the FUD that is being spread about the B shares. And one thing I want to say to people, think long and hard about that. Why would any of them sell their B shares at the end of this year? It makes zero sense. The B shares are there for them, for their retirement, for them to make money in the future. A lot of them have been working without pay, or now they're starting to get paid a little bit. They've left long careers to be involved in this venture. So I think that one of the questions that I did ask about the B shares, and the answer that I got, I wouldn't share in detail, but the answer that I got allayed any fears that anyone should have about them selling B shares this year.
Yeah, and I think it was during the conference on Friday when Brian gave his investor call that was recorded, live streamed, and still there. You can see it on Humbl's YouTube page. That he talked a little bit about the B shares and basically said that. And as I said with Thomas, we were on the Twitter Spaces the other night, and basically we said that. If you think about it, people didn't put up millions of dollars so that they could cash in their shares at 80 cents or a buck or whatever the price is going to be come December. They want to hold those until they're $20, $30, $50, whatever.
Exactly.
Where is the price going to be in 5 years? Would it be miraculous for the company to be at $50 in 5 years? No, it would not be. I'm not saying it will be, but it certainly is in the realm of reason that it could be.
Absolutely.
And given that possibility, why would you want to be selling shares that could be worth $50 for, a buck or $2? I mean, that would be just silly. As you say, it makes no sense.
And one thing Brian said is they're not going to run out of money. He reiterated that the things that could cause the company to go under, those things are not there. So I have the utmost confidence, and I continue to buy more. My girls buy more. My kids are invested. I have friends that are invested, and to be able to purchase it at 80 cents is a gift. So a gift.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It's like, folks, when you can buy Humbl, and I'd have to look, did it close at 79 cents yesterday or 80? Do you remember?
It was a little under, 80.
Like,
I think,
whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Close.
matter. But the point is, what's the downside if it's 79 cents? And the other thing I said to people at the conference, but others, I think I may have, anyway, I'll just say it. The point is, folks, if you're holding now and you're underwater, and probably most people are underwater on the investment right now, I would say, it doesn't matter unless you're looking for grocery money, that you've got to take the money out of the stocks to go buy groceries or make a car payment. But if this is investment money that you can leave on the sidelines, well, then, it doesn't matter if it's at 79 cents right now. And, folks, here's the deal. I've said this before. We're buying the future, not the present. It doesn't matter that it's 80 cents. We're going to be holding on for double-digit share price numbers. And maybe if you want to unload, you could start to unload, when it's 10, 12, 20, $25. I
One thing
think,
Brian said is that the share price is not the company. And I think people need to remember that. There's a lot of manipulation in the market. In the markets, there's not a huge amount of volume right now. We're also on the OTC, which is the wild, wild west. So like you said, just patience. I know they will execute.
yeah, and that's a good point. That at some point in the future, we're going to be on the NASDAQ. I can't say when that will be. Some people think in the summer, next summer. Some people think it might be early 2023. Whenever that happens, it doesn't mean that the stock price can't go up on the OTC. And remember, we're being shorted by so many people. But as more developments come out, and we just had NFT, we just had the, what am I forgetting? The ticketing platform just came out. And now they're sending around some beta versions of the app that, this is a company that is continuing to press forward. They're not sitting on the sidelines. They're working feverishly to get to where they want to go. And in a conversation with me, Brian said, actually Thomas asked him, the deal you did with Ticket Evolve, does that negate you looking to buy another ticket company? He goes, no, I'm always on the hunt for another deal. And I thought it was also important, I mentioned this before, that Brian Foote, does not want to grow the company just from internal sales. He wants to grow by adding more companies. And that's where you can get, as I, in another video said, that's what happened with Cisco. Cisco was just plowing through buying companies. They must have had a team of M&A people that did nothing 24/7. Just they were buying so many companies. I'm not saying Humbl will be on that par, but by the same token, we don't have to have incremental growth by ticket sales or incremental growth of NFTs or whatever. We will have all that growth, that internal growth. We'll also have the growth that comes from whatever deals.
Mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah, mergers and acquisitions.
Absolutely.
And then there are other things, and one of the things I think we haven't talked enough about, and maybe Brian would talk, I had said to him, and in case Brian's watching, I understand he can't do an interview. I said, Brian, I'd love to do an interview, and he, for regulatory reasons, said, he'd have to defer. But I said, I don't want to ask you what's coming out next week, or what are you doing on this, or what are you doing? I'd like him to give just a talk on his vision, kind of like he did in the Netherlands back in April of 2019, which is now almost going on 3 years ago, come next spring. But where are we? And I think what we haven't talked enough about is the tokenization and how that will apply to so many assets and really be fundamentally different. So real estate, and one thing that I would say is there was a company, you lose track of time as you go along in life, but maybe it was 30 years ago, maybe it was 25 years ago. The point of it was there was a guy, and I think it was in New Hampshire, and he was one of the fastest growing companies on Wall Street at the time, and he would just buy like 1,000 or 2,000 acres and then would sell it in increments of like 10 acres so that individual investors could have their own little bit of heaven, their own little gateway. But maybe he was at the time buying land for like $700 an acre and selling it for $3,000 an acre. Right. With tokenization, that was one, you might say, form of tokenization, but this is going to be a game changer where people can take office buildings, homes, whatever, and break it down. It's kind of like we buy stocks to be, we have tokenization in the ownership of a publicly traded company. Imagine if we could do that to a private home, an office building in Chicago or New York or whatever. That's right.
I think it's absolutely. And being in real estate, I'm very interested in tokenizing real estate and owning a fractional portion of different real estate. I think it's the way of the future.
I apologize for talking so long, but I wanted to get that out. And as you say in real estate, that or anything else, Did you, and when Brian said tokenization, I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of forget about that myself. I focus on the ticketing thing and I focus on the other stuff that's in front of you. And you go, oh yeah, that hasn't come yet. And yeah, the peer-to-peer hasn't come yet. As you have, what's your vision of the company? And as you peer into the future, in the near future, let's say over the course of the next year, what would you imagine happening with Humbl? In other words, with either developments or your own expectations, knowing what you know.
Well, I think we need financials, and we need financials. I mean, I think in we're going to see what they did for the third quarter. I think the fourth quarter we will see more revenue growth, and I think that as people get back out in the world, I think the ticketing is going to be huge. My transaction was seamless. I bought my daughter tickets to the weekend. It's in April here on Long Island, and it was $260 less than it would have been on Ticketmaster. So that was really cool to see. I think the revenue from the ticket sales will be big. I think.
And let me emphasize what you said. I don't know if maybe you said it and I missed it, but using the Humbl ticket platform, you bought the tickets. Mm-hmm. And it was $260 less, just in case people blinked and missed that. That's a pretty big difference,
Yeah, it's a big difference.
I mean, that's depending upon where you are, that's a suit of clothes, that's tickets to some other concert, that's an airline ticket to Florida or something. I mean, so $260 on one transaction.
It's a lot. And now that they've rolled out the beta version of the peer-to-peer, unfortunately, I have an Android. I don't do Apple anything, and I don't have it yet, but I've been asking people, and they said it's pretty seamless. They're playing around with it. They're sending money back and forth. They are they are emailing Humbl. They're getting responses. A lot of people have said that. In fact, one message that I got on my phone before, which I thought was a great one. I'd like to just read this. Overall, very smooth and functional. I bought some, received some. There are a few periods where the transactions don't go through, but they've seemed to be fixing that. It's getting better. The portfolio balance is pretty cool. They curved it off and it's smooth. So, a little bit of feedback on and then they did say that they are getting responses when they are submitting feedback on the peer-to-peer beta version. So, I can't wait to get it. I keep checking my email and my spam, waiting. I wish I would have had it before before we decided to do this interview, because I would have talked a little bit more about my experience with it. But maybe we can do that in the future. But I am getting good feedback from other people.
Yeah, and when Thomas and I on Wednesday evening were doing the Twitter Spaces where we kind of talked to a bunch of people in Humbl land, that's where it came out, and people were saying as we were talking, hey, we're playing with this and it's working great, and they were sending $1 back and forth. I made the mental mistake here that we're talking to people in Humbl land, and there's always different people who tune in and click on, the videos who have never heard of us before. So if you don't know, Humbl is part of the financial technology, the wave of which I would say is going to be around the world, I should say, and is going to facilitate the sending of money from point A to point B. They buy tickets. They're revolutionizing, you might say, the ticket industry, as we just talked about. And so between peer-to-peer payments and the crypto wallet and the investments, I'm going to be doing an interview coming up with Calvin Waite, who's kind of the manager of the investment side and the ETX blocks, I should say. So that'll be.
I will mention my ETXs are doing very well.
Is that right?
They are doing very well. Yes.
Have you compared them how they're doing with, say, the stock market? Is one doing better than the other?
Well, I'm in New York, so I can't have the active ETXs. Mine's through Coinbase. In New York, doesn't allow they don't allow staking of crypto, and they don't allow certain things. I can't have Binance or Bittrex or BlockFi. So I'm using it through Coinbase. But I am making money, and I am not a crypto trader. I'm a crypto hodler. So it's nice to have someone else doing it for me. I really don't trade crypto. I buy it and hold it. So to have them actually handling my ETX and trading it for me is is great. They're up a lot. I mean, even though we just saw a little bit of a pullback in the crypto, I think we're starting another bull run. So I think we're going to do really well in the
Which
next
blocks is that? Do you know the number offhand?
3, 5, 10.
3, 5, 10. And how long have you had money in there, approximately?
Oh, since the day they released it.
So almost April, roughly, I would say, somewhere in that area. Well, good. That's good to know. We won't keep you much longer. We're here on a Saturday, and everyone wants to do other things on a Saturday besides be tied down. But that said, before we close out, you're positive about the company, even more positive, if anything, after having gone there. I'm positive. I think this is a dynamic company run by good people. I've not seen or heard personally anything to dissuade that opinion. As we said earlier in the show, it emphasized by, there it is, the CEO of Humbl, taking his time to talk with just everyone, all the investors, and being very forthcoming. Hang on one second. Go ahead, Ellie. I'm sorry, I had your mic off for a minute. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to mention that the Humbl Nation is they're a wonderful group of people. We all know each other from Twitter, but now to actually know each other in person, it's pretty amazing. In fact, this flag behind me was actually made by someone in the Humbl Nation, 12 Gauge Industries, and he sent it to my home. For my new company, Armed and Jack. So the friendships and the relationships that we're making, I know that, we're all going to get together again next year. And I think next year there'll be even more positivity as the company has grown and the stock price has gone up, which I am confident it will. The market is very volatile right now in general. So I think that just be long and strong and don't listen to the FUD.
Exactly. There's a lot of naysayers, and frankly, I don't get it. They don't contribute anything. They're just being naysayers. And, it's like if you have something that you want to say that's not right, that's one thing. But just to say this is a scam and that kind of stuff, it's just ridiculous. It's like. Yeah,
I've heard a lot of negativity, but I don't listen to it. I just tune it out, or, if someone says something on Twitter or that, I just ignore it. It's. Unfortunately, investing for a lot of people is very emotional. I've always said you have to take the emotion out of it, but you do, but it's not easy, especially since, there's this camaraderie with Humbl. So there is an emotional part of it.
And I agree with you. I've never seen it in any other business. I said that to Brian Foote when we were talking. I go, we have such a sense of community here. I go, I don't know that I ever bought Coca-Cola. I don't think I did. But I go, you don't have that when you buy Coca-Cola, or something else. There's no sense of community. And yes, it is. And Brian admitted, and I admitted, you talk about the emotion. When the stock was down for a long time, it was because you want it to be up, of course. And then when it's down, you kind of emotionally suffer through it. Yeah, it weighs on you. It's natural. But as I have said all spring, and people must have thought I was just the biggest excuse maker for him, but the fact of the matter is, if you look at it intellectually, you weren't buying, as I say, an established company. Whether it's not like buying Ford, it's not like buying Coke, and those things, or Clorox. They've been around for years. We're buying a company that just was given birth less than a year ago. December, I'm going to say, is going to be like year one, where they did the SPAC. And heck, we didn't even have our own trading symbol. And by the way, if you don't know it, it's HMBL. But we didn't even have our own symbol until March. That's how new we are, so.
We had the symbol of an old
flooring company.
And, fintech is so new for everyone as well. I mean, I'm heavily invested in innovative tech. And I believe that fintech is the way of the future. I do believe in decentralized finance. And Humbl's doing it right. They're doing it right. And they're being so careful to dot every I and cross every T so they don't get any, there's huge fines, and they have to be careful, and people have to remember that.
They do have to be.
Roll out. Right.
And I was going to bring that up because what you said, Brian said, you reminded me of this, that when he said we're not going to run out of money, he goes, to quote him, he goes, there's two bogeys that could throw us off track. A, we run out of money, and he goes, that's not going to happen because they have enough financing. And he goes, B, that we run afoul of the regulators, and that's not going to happen because we're not going to release things until we have regulatory approval. And as you brought up with the ETXs, that New York doesn't allow you to do this. That's why I wanted to bring that up. It's an example of how in one state you could buy some of the Binance or others or Coinbase, and in other states like New York you can't. So the regulatory hurdles are not just dealing with one department of government at the federal level, you also have to deal with people at the state level. So it really becomes its own maze of regulatory jungle that you got to go through. It makes sense that would hold it up. And, a lot of the FUD people were, why don't they have this out? They should have had this out in March, Folks, just ignore that kind of talk. Before I'll let you go, but is there anything else you want to say in conclusion, or did you?
Just that I hope that everyone understands that they are working so hard behind the scenes. I have never seen a harder working group of individuals. They tirelessly, and not for a lot of money at this point. So just remember, what they are building is going to take time, and just, keep your conviction, just keep dollar cost averaging in. If you bought in at $6 or you bought in at $5, this is a gift at 80 cents. Buy another 100 shares.
Great idea. Yeah.
$80,
I said that to someone wrote the other day and go, well, I got in at 7, I'm down. How can you blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, did you buy any at 79 cents? Don't be complaining that you bought it at 7 and then never got in again. It's a gift. Bring your cost base.
Well, the mentality is that people only buy when they see green. They don't buy on red days. You've got to buy on red days. We've had a lot of them, and I know it can be discouraging, but just hold on. And
that's such an important lesson. I just want to, folks, if you're new to investing, and I try to talk to people who are new to investing, what Allie just said is exactly right. And as I've often said, are most people wealthy? No. Then don't do what most people do. They don't trade right. They only buy on the green days. They only buy when it's going up. And as I say, when do you want to buy Cadillacs? When they're $80,000 or when they're $15,000? If they go down cheaper, buy them then. That's where you're buying a Cadillac right now with Humbl at 80 cents, let's say, and 100 shares is $80, right? 1,000 shares is $800.
Right.
If it goes up and it's green, 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 as it has been red, red, red for the last 4 months or 5 months, you're going to wish, oh my, why now that I'm buying at $5 didn't I buy when it was 80 cents? Does that make sense?
Exactly.
So that's where you said earlier, there's a lot of emotions in investing. You got to use your intellect. It's 80 cents. I'll close with this, and I don't mean to pontificate, but if Allie and I are wrong and you buy and you end up as an investor losing $1,000 or $5,000 or $8,000, and you're not using rent money, no one wants to lose $5,000 or $8,000, but you're not going to become homeless because of that. You'll survive that. If, on the other hand, you sell and it goes up to $50 a share price, and you go, oh my God, I sold my 4,000 shares, and now that would have been worth 200,000. You will never get over that. The rest of your life, that will haunt you. That I could have been worth 500,000. I could have been worth 100,000 or $1 million. That'll haunt you forever. So
I have a suggestion.
Yep.
Give your significant other or your kids or your sister, your brother, your aunt, your phone, have them change your password to Ameritrade or Charles Schwab or whatever app you use. Change your password and change your password back next year.
And why is that?
So that you don't look at the share price every
Oh, okay. There you go. Okay, I wasn't following you.
Yeah. it might work, you know.
Well, and here's what I would say, folks: if you're a family with kids, you might want to think about opening up. I mean, if your kids are like, especially 5 and below or 10 and below, open up a custodial account at a stock house, and there's no minimums, I don't believe, and put $80 in and buy 100 shares of Humbl. I mean, what's it going to be worth? 100 shares if by the time they're 20, let's say it was $50 for the sake of discussion, that's $5,000. So it's a way of giving your kids $5,000 for $80.
It's a pretty good return on your investment.
Pretty good return. And so when either they're going to college or getting out of college, I mean, you can set up the custodial account and do that. It's just something to think about. Well, Allie, it's always good to visit with you. Great to have seen you in Nashville. Hopefully
awesome
we can do it again. And folks, I think both of us would recommend that if you can make it to the next investors conference, we would encourage you to do so. Couldn't have been more fun. It exceeded my expectations. It was everything I hoped it to be, would be, and more.
Absolutely. And Nashville is, if you haven't had a chance to go to Nashville, you have to. That was actually my first time in Nashville.
Yeah,
I'll be going back.
that was fun. I don't know. I'm sure. I have no idea. We don't know where. I don't know if Brian Foote knows where it would be next year. But Nashville was fun, and I'm sure we'll have a great time wherever it is. But Allison, we'll look forward to talking to you again in the future. In the meantime, take care of yourself, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Terry.